Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome Erica Roberts to the stage to begin our program.
The vein of the big tree gives life like an artery, just as its underground arms reach to save. Ocular proof of the time-defying beauty that paints, communicating its message boldly with light. It's silent. The foliage signals the change. Autumn's paintbrush, it has a past. Finding movement in their native descent, the leaves just leave, creating a soft carpet of colors that feed the hungry soil. It's sacred. A congregation of timber sending hallelujahs to the heavens. New journey intertwined with roots from the stewards, reminding us of the protected connection, life underfoot. It's secluded. Their story, misunderstood, the importance was ignored, health over dirt, healing from the earth, missing the mark, the legacy is what's hurt. Heart of the home is buried deep. Above the world moves about, sleep, walking through headlines. Motives motivating meaningless moments. Murky are those waters and vast are the empty promises. And the alarm clock is tainted privilege, strings loudly, disturbing the progress. It's spiritual. Interpretation from afar, your highness, mountains glowing like crowns. The color green was born here. Organic altar honoring the ancestors beneath the tapestry. Textured is the pathway of the overlooked past that connects us to a silent love. Violated memories made a victim of the land, a symphony of emotions, moving from the branches down the trunks, vibrating the ground into a relentless rhythm. Its precious percussion drumming through time. Its presence is full and felt internally. We were led here by them. The truth is here, hanging from the trunk's canopy. Love is here, moving through the air. We hear it. We feel it. We see it. We know it.
Friends, my name is Tricia King-Mims. I'm the Executive Director of National Park Partners of Chickamauga, Chattanooga, and Moccasin Bend. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this commemoration of 20 years of the Moccasin Bend National Archeological District. I'm deeply honored to be leading National Park Partners during this pivotal moment in a long line of pivotal moments about a very special landscape whose moments are measured in millennia. The indigenous history of this land spans more than 10,000 years and was settled first by the Yuchi and later the Cherokee. The very land we stand upon today was part of the Cherokee Nation prior to the Indian Removal Act of 1838. To all our friends and tribal partners and our guests from the Trail of Tears Association Conference, welcome. Welcome home. Please join me for a moment in thanking Keith Sanford and the Tennessee Aquarium for the generous use of their beautiful facilities. Sarah, Zoe, Tom, all the staff, they've opened the entire plaza and facilities to us for this very special event. So thank you to the Tennessee Aquarium. A huge thanks also to Bruz Clark and the Lyndhurst Foundation. Their generous grants over the decades have made it possible to educate and inspire so many people about the history of Moccasin Bend, and they also provided funding for this celebration today. So in a town known for public-private partnerships, creating the Moccasin Bend National Archeological District is the pinnacle. quite possibly the most partnery thing to have ever happened, even in Chattanooga. City, county, state, federal, tribal, and private partners all work together to create the only one of its kind in the entire country. As we mark time on a land from time immemorial, the history of Moccasin Bend began at least 12,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age. Archaeological surveys revealed projectile points from that era buried deep in the soil. 500 years ago, contact with Spanish explorers brought disease to the people who inhabited Mississippian villages on Moccasin Bend, the ruins of which are intact in the archaeological record. 400 years ago, a slave trading route developed across Moccasin Bend, and 186 years ago, that same path became part of the Trail of Tears. This segment crossing Moccasin Bend is now part of the Trail of Tears National Historic Trail. We will pause here and acknowledge the lives lost and forever changed on the Trail of Tears. Please join me in welcoming Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. of the Cherokee Nation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. OCO, everyone. I am very proud to be here to represent the great Cherokee Nation and proud to bear witness to not only the Trail of Tears Conference and the Trail of Tears Association, which holds such a close place in my heart and in the hearts and minds of the Cherokee people, but to help celebrate the protection of the Moccasin Bend site. We are today acknowledging across this country Indigenous Peoples Day, and that's good. That's a sign of progress in this country, and it's something that we can all celebrate. At the Cherokee Nation, we're very much focused on and oriented towards our future, and we're building towards a bright future, and we're building towards that great Cherokee society that our ancestors have always strived for. They worked towards that before anyone ever heard of the United States. They worked towards that before anyone ever laid any states upon tribal lands or treated with our people. They believed in it even in the darkest moments in our history. They never gave up. And so you can understand why we are so future-focused at the Cherokee Nation. But we cannot be future-focused if we don't tend to our past, those trails that got us here, all of them. And we can't do it alone. And that's why it's good to celebrate today, not only as another Indigenous Peoples Day, but a day in which we can reflect on the progress and the protection for Moccasin Bend and realize that collective action still matters in this country, and Indian country can be a part of it, and we can work together with our friends and neighbors across jurisdictions, across geography, and across all sorts of things that might otherwise divide us. That feels good at this point in the history of the Cherokee Nation. So I'm glad that Cherokee Nation could play a part. I'm glad we can be a part of this evening. I do want to express my deep appreciation for, again, the Trail of Tears Association. More people in this country should know that the men and women who volunteer their efforts to keep the Trail of Tears Association strong are doing something important for the country. In 1987, the Congress of the United States made a promise, and that promise was to remember, and that promise was to invest and memorialize, but that promise could only be kept by men and women who want to keep it, who want to make it part of their life's work to keep the memory of the trail alive. And so since 1993, the Trail of Tears Association and everyone who's ever volunteered or served in any position or worked for that organization has done it. And so they've helped the country with the work that they've done. And they've also helped the tribal nations. As many of you know, it's only been in about the last 5 decades that many of the tribal nations in this country, particularly the Cherokee Nation, have been on a trajectory in which we could build up strength and get to a point where we can tend to our past and make sure we preserve what it means to be Cherokee. But we could never do it alone. We can't do it alone today. And we certainly cannot do it effectively without friends like the Trail of Tears Association. So one thing I want to announce today, as an expression of our continued support for the Trail of Tears Association, which we support financially every year because they stretch a dollar, they do such good. They're out there in communities, they're out there engaging with institutions. I know that they're out there helping young people understand the history of this country, even the difficult chapters. But we are today announcing for each chapter of the Trail of Tears Association a gift of $10,000. That's $90,000 to help them do what they do best. And unlike our friends in the government of the United States, there's no strings attached to those dollars. Those are unrestricted. But more than the dollars that we're going to deliver, I want to deliver the sentiment. I want to deliver the support. I want to deliver our admiration. I want to deliver our ongoing moral support for this organization. Because if in this century it's going to be a great Cherokee century, a great century for Indian country, a great century for this country to remember, then we've got to have all the friends we can get. And you can't find any finer friends than the people at the Trail of Tears Association. I'm glad to be a part of this today. I appreciate what all of you are doing, and I just am so proud of the work collectively that's been done to protect Moccasin Bend. But folks, we've got to stay vigilant. We've all got to keep up the good work. Thank you all very much. Widow.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to top that, but let me check my pockets real quick. No. Returning to our timeline of Moccasin Bend, we left off at the Trail of Tears route across Moccasin Bend to Browns Ferry on the Tennessee River. A glimmer of hope appeared in the years following when Jacob Cummings, an enslaved African American on a Moccasin Bend plantation, learned how to use the stars to navigate. And he borrowed a dugout canoe and made his way north, and later became a conductor on what is now the Underground Railroad National Network of Freedom. Yet another layer of Moccasin Bend's deep, deep history. The land still speaks, and we are still learning the stories. During the Civil War campaign for Chattanooga 161 years ago, that path of despair became a path of hope again as the U.S. Army supply line, or Cracker Line, reopened and made victory feel possible for thousands of starving and nearly defeated U.S. Army soldiers. Now it's time to talk about the private sector in the more recent, about 100 years ago or so, 104 to be exact. None other than Chattanooga legend Adolph Ox offered to give up half the money that it would take to make Moccasin Bend a national park. No one took him up on it, and the next chance at preservation came from President Harry Truman, who authorized a Moccasin Bend National Park in 1950, which never came to fruition as Tennessee's then governor failed to meet the moment. Many community visionaries advocated for preserving Moccasin Bend in the decades to come. Little old ladies in tennis shoes, like Mrs. Sophia Long, who took any and every opportunity to make her preferences known, including her nephew Mickey Robbins' engagement party. Yes, in 1966, where her toast to the happy couple turned into a Save the Bend diatribe, probably the first one ever recorded, to an unsuspecting and captive audience. And if you know Mickey Robbins at all, you know he is not afraid to say what needs to be said when others won't, and clearly he comes by it honestly. The Moccasin Bend Task Force in the early 1980s started out looking at development and then pivoted to the other side of the river, here, pushing for preservation of the north side instead. Sally Robinson, Rick Montague, Jack McDonald, George Mahoney, and Bob Mayville recommended reconnecting downtown Chattanooga to the Tennessee River on the south bank and creating a string of parks with Moccasin Bend as the crown jewel on the north side. And look where we are today. Could we possibly thank them enough for the amazing riverfront we have and for the amazing string of parks with Moccasin Bend as the crown jewel on the north? 38 years ago, Moccasin Bend was designated the first and still only National Historic Landmark in Hamilton County. The National Park Service's nomination, based on archaeological excavations and observations from Lawrence Alexander and Major McCullough and others in the mid-1980s, reveals that, quote, excuse me one second, "This is the best preserved and most important, compact, diverse sample of archaeological remains known in the Tennessee River Valley. Moreover, it is ideally situated to be easily and rigorously protected for the long-term future and has the highest potential for rich and varied high-volume public interpretation and display of any known archaeological resource in the United States. It added, despite a litany of uninformed destructive alterations to the vicinity in the last few years, the basic integrity of content and settling of all the constituent resources remains remarkably intact. During this time, Save the Bend first became a slogan, and stickers handed out at the earliest river bend festivals graced bumpers everywhere you looked. The grassroots energy grew and needed organization. That came in the form of the Friends of Moccasin Bend, established in 1995, with Shelley Andrews at the helm. It's been almost 10 years since Shelley passed away, and while others knew her much better than I, one thing I know for certain is that she would absolutely love everything about today. I'm so grateful that Shelley's husband, Don, and her brother, David, and David's wife, Gloria, are with us today. Oh, and Andrea. Shelley was a force of nature, not only coalescing the community support around Moccasin Bend National Park with many of you here today, but bringing along local, state, federal, and tribal partners to actually make it happen. Once the 2004 land donations we celebrate today took place, Shelley immediately turned her attention to creating a world-class visitor center to tell the story of Moccasin Bend to the world. In the meantime, with a generous commitment of funding from Greg Vital, Shelley and the Friends of Moccasin Bend collaborated to create the Moccasin Bend Lecture Series in 2006, now in its 19th year. Stick around this evening. If you don't have a ticket already, we might have a tiny bit of room on the wait list. It's at 7 o'clock p.m. at the IMAX to hear Chief Hoskin speak again. I'd like to take a moment to say a special thanks to Greg. Where are you, Greg? Oh. Whether providing the funding to help secure the property on Dogwood Lane above the Gateway site, which there's no question has prevented all manner of incompatible development from overlooking that site. I get calls every day from people wanting to sell it, and the answer is no. But thank goodness it was saved in 2009, or who knows what would be up there now. Going on almost 20 years of the lecture series. And just the dedication that you continue to show to Moccasin Bend and all the aspects in your private life, in your public life, and showing up year after year. We appreciate it. So the Friends of Moccasin Bend worked tirelessly to complete the preservation puzzle as promised by the city, county, and state with the relocation of the firing range and the state mental hospital in 2004. Speaking of the firing range, before I introduce our next speaker, former Chattanooga Mayor Ron Littlefield, I want to recognize Kay Parrish, who stepped in as interim director after Shelley passed and maintained continuity for the Friends of Moccasin Bend. Kay also served as the facilitator for the consolidation effort between the Friends of Moccasin Bend and the Friends of Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park that created National Park Partners. Now it's my pleasure to introduce former, Public Works Director, City Council Person, Mayor, etc., Ron Littlefield.
Well, my challenge is to compress 50 years into 5 minutes. I'm 78 years old. I have a bucket list. I have accomplished a number of those things on the bucket list, but still very prominent and at the top of the bucket list is Moccasin Bend, and in particularly moving the firing range, because it is one of the last elements that is the most inappropriate use out there. I know Moccasin Bend goes back 12,000 years. The history of Moccasin Bend goes back 12,000 years. Mine only goes back to the 1970s as a young planter. But assigned to look at Moccasin Bend and other things on my desk, we were looking at hundreds of acres and wondering, what were the proper uses there for those hundreds of acres? A zoo, or moving the Chattanooga Zoo, was suggested. A major brewery, some of you will remember that. Bush was looking at Chattanooga to put the brewery that ended up going down to Cartersville. Fortunately, they went that way. An asphalt plant, probably a little more inappropriate than a firing range, but that didn't go either. And then a theme park, which sounded like it was something you could work with, but it didn't really work out. There were known prehistoric sites there and historic qualities from the Civil War that we had pretty good records on. But there was a lot of unknown that required serious archaeological studies. So in April of 1982, we brought a panel of very qualified and esteemed developers under the banner of the Urban Land Institute, an internationally known and recognized development organization, to do a panel study on Moccasin Bend and what we should do with it. I remember the beginning, the initial night, because I ushered the 9 panel members and others up to the top of Lookout Mountain to Point Park, going to the Ox Museum, so that we could overlook Moccasin Bend. And we thought, this is going to be great. It was one of those not too rare nights that Moccasin Bend was completely obliterated by fog. So we were standing up there pointing out the big windows of the Ox Museum and saying, if only you could see it, this is what you're looking at out there. But the panelists were here for almost a week, so they spent a lot of time. They dug into the history, they dug into the known and unknown qualities of the site, and they produced a 70-page report, which I occasionally print off a copy just to remind myself what all is in there. And they did a very complete and wonderful documentation of all that was necessary there. And they did suggest that we focus on getting all of this side of the river, because we knew that Moccasin Bend was going to take a while to wait through all the legal limitations and so forth. They said, pay attention over there. You cannot appreciate where you're sitting now, what was here at that time. But the city and the county working together, and others working together, Jack Lupton, rest his soul, and others, have produced such a wonderful reflection of our history here that we now have a high bar to establish the park at Moccasin Bend. Moccasin Bend report here recommended 2 things. The Moccasin Bend Commission, which became the Moccasin Bend Task Force, and removal of the firing range is plural. Most people don't remember there was another firing range, a skeet range out there, which the city followed through in short order, following the recommendations of this planning and development organization, and purchased the skeet range and put it out of business and incorporated into the other lands that were already out there. So that report and the initial findings of the 9-member commission was followed by countless meetings and reviews and studies and committees and commissions. And questions have arisen lately as to whether all of these promises that we're fulfilling now were ever documented. Were documents ever signed? Yes, they were. I signed some of them myself. So they asked, can you prove it? Well, times pass, groups come and go, and I can remember very well that an entire filing cabinet of records were microfilmed in the planning office. Now, where is the microfilm? No one really knows. The important thing is we are at a point where all of that documentation is unimportant, because we all acknowledge there's enough institutional knowledge out here looking at people that I know for the last half century and more who remember when promises were made, and it's time for promises to be fulfilled. So with that, let me thank you. Yes, it's always nice to applaud the conclusion and the recognition that we have promises to make and promises to fulfill. Now it's my pleasure to introduce someone that I have known throughout this long and winding road, as the Beatles said, all over the years. She's much younger than me, and she looks it, but she has been a fellow striver toward the goal. She was the county counterpart to many of the things that we did in the city, and she will tell you about that, I'm sure. So I'm not going to invade her 5 minutes. My friend, my fellow striver, Janine Alday.
Thank you, Ron. And I want a special thank you to Tricia. She has put this whole thing together, and wow, has she done a good job. Yeah. And also, I want to welcome, I know she did a good welcome to the National Trail of Tears Conference, but we are so pleased to have you here in Chattanooga. Thank you all for picking us for your conference. Now, the reason I'm here is because everybody else is dead. It's a real honor for me to represent the two mayors that I worked for, starting in 1978 when Dalton Roberts was first elected. At that time it was called county executive. Now it's county mayor. And then he was followed by Claude Ramsey, each of them serving their full four-year term. So for 32 years, I worked for county government under two phenomenal leaders who, if you look around, you wouldn't believe the difference they made in this community. It was unbelievable. They played a major role starting out in the early 80s of a visioning process that we had here in Chattanooga. And those of you that have lived here since that time probably came to one or more of those visioning meetings. Anybody could come. Everyone was invited. And you talked about what your dreams were for this city. And because of that, well, both Dalton and Claude played major roles in that process. And that led to the development of the Tennessee River Park. And it also, I think, was a key reason this community began to focus on Moccasin Bend. Dalton Roberts was quite a character. And if some of you here knew him, I can remember when he described, as he talked about the results of the visioning process, what he could see. He could see things in his mind that nobody else could even imagine. And what he saw was a string of parks along the river, on both sides of the river. And he called it a necklace with pearls on it. And the crown jewel of his description was always Moccasin Bend. And that caused the people of this community to begin to look at Moccasin Bend in a different way, a far more important way than we had ever considered it before. And following Dalton, then, with already the vision in place, Claude Ramsey, who had been a strawberry farmer, he knew how to manage things. He knew how to set schedules and look ahead. And he pushed that dream with everything he had to make the Tennessee River Park a reality and to keep the city and county focused on Moccasin Bend. The establishment of the National Archeological District at Moccasin Bend was a primary result of this process that everybody in this community had an opportunity to be a part of. You know, when you have a part in planning something, then you want to protect it. I mean, it belongs to you. And Moccasin Bend belongs to everybody in Hamilton County. They feel it. It's important to them. It, as Tricia mentioned earlier, it remains today the only National Historic Landmark in all of Hamilton County. So it's very important to us. The city and county governments are proud today as they were when we first started the process that focused on Moccasin Bend, to have played a major role because they both donated land to the Moccasin Bend National Archeological District. The land on the bend that had belonged to the city and county then was donated by those two governments. So it was very important to them. And I just want to say thank you, Tricia, for putting all this together today, and thank you all for being here. I want to introduce, I'm about to forget to introduce one of the most important people under this tent today, and that's Mickey Robbins. I don't need to tell you much more about him other than I personally have known Mickey since he married a high school friend of mine. And at that party that Tricia mentioned earlier, that was when Mickey started this passionate march that he's on to save Moccasin Bend. So I want you to hear about all that from Mickey himself. Mickey Robbins.
Well, my fellow co-perpetrator is Eloise, and she's sitting right over there in the green jacket. So she deserves a lot of credit for helping out with all this. Getting the state's 245 acres transferred to the Park Service in 2004 took a lot of time, as often happens with government. Things can move rather slowly, but once Governor Phil Bredesen was sure that obligations to the mental health were met, he signed off on the transfer, and it happened. We at the hospital just wanted to see it done, especially since the hospital had helped start the effort in 1995 and has supported the effort ever since. Speaking of the summer of 1995, it was a very memorable one and an interesting one that to some degree has been lost in history. But I thought you would enjoy hearing about a time when the state and the hospital did took the lead on saving the Bend. I had just become chairman of its board, and it was a surprise one morning in June to learn that workers from UTC were preparing land next to the hospital for athletic fields. Concerned, or should I say alarmed, that the acreage of the Bend was up for grabs, however legitimate its needs and however much we loved and supported the university, our board began searching for ways to protect the Bend. We invited archaeological friend Dr. Major McCullough to our board meeting. UTC had in the meantime graciously shelved its work on the athletic fields, so that was over. But Major reminded us that Congress had passed 1950 legislation protecting up to 1,400 acres. Although blocked by Governor Frank Clement's refusal to write the $100,000 check, Major told us that a precedent had been set for these precious resources, Native American and Civil War, and that a new national park initiative was the best long-term solution to protect the Bend and prevent future land incursions. At the end of June, believe it or not, conveniently, Bruce Babbitt, the Secretary of the Interior, came to town to speak to the Outdoor Writers Association. And while here, he toured Moccasin Bend, after which he said prophetically, "You've got something really great here. Take care of it." So he officially suggested formation with those profound comments of a national heritage area, a well-meaning but loose form of conservation and preservation that we didn't think cut the mustard. Babbitt then told us privately that only a national park offered permanent protection for the bend, and that was the way to go. We thought that did cut the mustard and liked it much better. Shortly afterwards, several of us on the hospital board joined with an outside volunteer group, including my good friend Jay Mills, and formed the Friends of Moccasin Bend National Park. One of our early acts was a full-blown press conference on the hospital front lawn where we pronounced to the media that we knew the national park was the way to go. I'm not so sure that town fathers and town mothers thought that we knew what we were doing, but we wanted a national park and kept meeting at the hospital to map out how to achieve it. About that time, the tribes entered the picture, thank goodness. City and county officials had for some time batted around different ideas for the bend, including an outdoor amphitheater, a zoo, a tourist park, and an Indian village, in addition to a national park. It became apparent that the latter was not everybody's first choice, but the national park was almost everybody's second choice, especially after Native Americans with ties to the bend, including the 5 civilized tribes, came in with their support for federal protection. Native American involvement has been an invaluable part of our effort ever since. Toward the end of that famed summer of 1995, several of us met with Congressman Zach Wamp to broach the national park idea, which he enthusiastically endorsed. That led to an 8-year effort culminating in passage of the federal legislation and later, as we know today, to the transfer of the property, which we now celebrate. We're indebted to Zach for his great accomplishment then and now. Well, all in all, the transfer went well. All in all, the transfer went well, and the summer of 1995 was a big one. Our hospital group, acting on behalf of the state, was proud to help save the bend. And I now turn the program over to a distinguished Native American leader, Jack Baker, the Trail of Tears organization.
Good afternoon. It's fitting that we are at this location, which in 1838 was known as Ross's Landing, which was where the mercantile establishment of the Ross family was located. But in May 26th of 1838, the soldiers began rounding up the Cherokee people in Georgia. And within a 2-week period, virtually all of the Cherokees had been moved from the state of Georgia to here at Ross's Landing. And in early June, they began sending them west. There was a detachment of close to 1,000 that were put on boats and sent west. And then a few days later, another detachment of 700 or 800 were sent west. And then a few days after that, another detachment was sent by land. They went across Moccasin Bend to Waterloo, Alabama, where the larger steamboats could come up and they could be put on steamboats there. And of that last group, there were roughly 600 that left and only 450 arrived. There was 150 deaths on the way. And because of that, we were able to delay the departure of the rest of the detachments until later that year. So, and then the Cherokees asked to be in charge of their own removal at that point. So we were removed west from there. But this location at Ross's Landing was where the first ones were sent, and the first 2 went around Moccasin Bend by boat. So, and about a little over 20 years ago, I was honored when Congressman Zach Wamp asked me to speak at the congressional hearing on saving Moccasin Bend. So Jay Mills, who was mentioned earlier, the 2 of us spoke at the hearing. And later, due to Congressman Wamp's efforts, Moccasin Bend was declared the historic archaeological area. But the Cherokees owe more than the City of Moccasin Bend to Congressman Watt. He also secured the funding for the development of Blythe's Ferry, which we greatly appreciate. So, and he worked also for the expansion of the Trail of Tears National Historic Trail into the states of North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. So I think we owe Congressman Watt a great debt of gratitude. And it's my honor to introduce Congressman Watt.
I didn't know that was my introduction. All right, y'all. Good. Thanks. So now that both of my children are elected officials, I'm real sensitive to recognizing elected officials. And State Representative Greg Vitale's already been recognized, so he's kind of representing the state legislative delegation, and he does it well, and we're grateful for everything he's done. Commissioner Lee Helton is right in front of me, kind of representing county government. Who else is in current elected office? I know Sally Robinson's here, used to be on the city council. Anybody else? I just don't want to start without recognizing you. I'm just really glad that I didn't have to speak right after Chief Hoskins, because that dude will light up a room. He was good. So y'all tell him, if I don't see him tonight, that was a great kickoff. He's an excellent speaker. I know of him, and I've worked with the chiefs from Tahlequah for many years. I'd never met him until today. Chief Hicks from the Eastern Band is an old friend of mine. He was the chief years ago, in fact, when we did this, and now he's the chief again. He couldn't be with us tonight, but my friend Cleta Townsend, who was real close friends with my mom, who's on the Trail of Tears board, Cleta sent me a quote from Chief Hicks when he was here 19 years ago on this plaza on the other side of the saltwater version of the Tennessee Aquarium to dedicate the passage on behalf of the city of Chattanooga. And this is an amazing statement about where we are. He said, our Cherokee ancestors were forced to leave this landing just as the city of Chattanooga took its Creek name, Sadanugi. Its Creek name was Tsadaugi, Sadanugi. But this place where we stand today was not only a place of sorrow for the Cherokee. We traded with our neighbors here for many years. We enjoyed a vibrant economy and shared our culture just as we do today. We coexisted and shared our talents, skills, and wares with our neighbors just as they did with us. This is a Cherokee place. It's not an Eastern Band, Western Band, or a United Ketua place. This place remembers before we were divided, when we were one great nation, the Cherokee Nation. The water holds our tears of joy and sorrow. The rocks hold the sounds of our great Cherokee language. This soil has absorbed our blood and continues to clutch our footsteps. No amount of removal or federal policy can strip this land of the memories it embraces. We have traveled today from all different directions, but we can know Chattanooga today as our home. To all the Cherokee people, to all the Creek people, we welcome you home because this is your home, and we are grateful to be the stewards of your extraordinary legacy. The reason that me and many others are proud of our Cherokee blood. The Cherokee had their own alphabet. They were the most educated of all the tribes. Extraordinary people, and we carry that legacy forward. So I want to start because I think if we understand where we've been, we can literally know and understand better where we are and determine where we need to go. So Jim Ogden is back there with a hat on because he works for the National Park Service. And Linda Moss Mines is sitting at the end of that chair over there, at the end of that row. She's our county historian, and he is our Moccasin Bend historian. And they have given me a lot of what I know, and they've motivated my heart to work on behalf of the history, the legacy that we are carrying forward. Because when it's all said and done, we won't be here, but it will. It will. So this is part of what we are doing, and it is so very important. Margaret Mead once said she had come to believe that a small group of dedicated and committed people could actually change the world. In fact, she said, it's the only thing that ever has. And that quote has reminded me of this friends group for the 30 plus years that I've been running around with them, because they just never let go. We had to save the Bend twice, y'all. And I'm here to tell you today, if we have to do it again, we'll do it again. Because it's worth saving. It's worth saving. They talked about Jay Mills. All of the archaeologists, they talked about Dr. McCullough, Lawrence Alexander. They've given us a tremendous amount of information as well. Information is power. It always has been. More so today than ever, because information can be shared globally instantaneously. Information is power. Pat Wilcox, Chris Vass, Clint Cooper, Lee Anderson before him. Sunlight is the most effective disinfectant ever. If you just share information, people will make the right decision most of the time. And when they don't, people need to organize to make sure that they understand why they should. Without the sharing of the information, we wouldn't be here today to celebrate saving Moccasin Bend a second time. I'm not going to leave this stage without saying that as a former federal official, my son is the county mayor, Tim Kelly is the city mayor, both of our mayors completely supported what we've done. And that is preserving and protecting Moccasin Bend National Archeological District, and removing the firing range, and transitioning the mental health center to the federal park. That is what we all have to commit to do. I will challenge today everyone in elected office at the local, state, and federal office to help us finish the job. We need money to move the firing range off the bend. The state may want help with cleaning up the building after they build a new mental health center somewhere else. And we're grateful that decision was made. And we are grateful for the leadership that called on everyone to be cautious and diligent and make sure we made the right decision at the right time. And that decision was made. But the job is not finished. I will talk to my friend, Congressman Fleischman, who is now a cardinal, about seeking federal money to help us get the firing range off the bend, because we should never go this far and not finish the journey to where we need to be, so that generations upon generations upon generations will understand why this is the Moccasin Bend National Archeological District. Guys, when I started working on this, and I said this to Clint Cooper not long ago, and he called Fran Manella, the then director of the National Park Service, who confirmed that working with the National Park System is not like other challenges when you're in Congress. Members of Congress can write legislation, and maybe they'll get it passed through the House or the Senate. You cannot get a bill enacted into law that affects the National Park System without them doing. The National Park System, and Brad Bennett speaks after me, he can validate this, they do their homework on every front. They have NEPA concerns over everything they do. They have to publicly involve every one of you by federal law. They have to involve all the tribes under federal law in every decision they make. They have to vet every single thing, and you have to prove the national significance. And while the reason it took 8 years is because every Congress, we were advancing these causes, and they said, you must show the national significance of Moccasin Bend. And as we were doing that, and they were doing the archaeological reports, I want to mention one other guy right now, Dr. Dwayne King. He's left this earth, but he was instrumental in establishing to us why this was so historically significant and why it must be set aside. The National Park Service came back to me and said, Congressman Watt, what we have found is that this land is unlike any other land in the National Park System. It is the only land in the United States of America that deserves the designation as an archaeological district, because there's 12,000 years of human history there. Because throughout the millennia, humans have gravitated where the plains and the rivers and the mountains meet. And I can tell you, when you stand at the tip of Moccasin Bend to this very day, right now on a day like this, as the wind blows and the sun shines, it is a holy place where people have gathered for millennia through the Spanish era, De Soto, all before them, early woodlands, through the Creek and the Cherokee and the Civil War, fought there in multiple ways. It is historically significant. It is indeed a National Archeological District. It is a treasure. We must, and the state must, take maximum educational and tourism benefits from this precious place known as Moccasin Bend. As Mayor Kelly said, we are a national park city. We have reasserted that, we have claimed that, and now we're going to fully realize that. And ladies and gentlemen, every person here could be thanked for being here, showing your commitment to this process, because I'm going to tell you, when we're long gone, they will still be talking about the people who stepped up at the right time and were willing to stand in the gap and fight for the preservation of the Moccasin Bend National Archeological District, because it is worth it. It is worth it to fight for something like this that can actually be so beneficial to so many people for so long, and so many people can learn from it and reflect as they are there. And let's finish the job together. Now, let me introduce the superintendent of the Chickamauga Chattanooga National Military Park, which includes the Moccasin Bend National Archaeological District, Brad Bennett. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Congressman Watt, for that introduction. On behalf of the entire National Park Service, I want to thank you for your leadership in the creation of Moccasin Bend National Archaeological District in 2003. The federal protection of this nationally significant landscape opened the door 1 year later for the City of Chattanooga, Hamilton County, and the state of Tennessee to donate more than 700 acres to the people of the United States to preserve and interpret 12,000 years of indigenous presence on this peninsula, cradled by the Tennessee River. I also want to thank the Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole peoples for entrusting the National Park Service to steward this home of your ancestors. We appreciate your continuous interest and support for further federal protection of adjacent lands within the aforementioned larger Moccasin Bend National Historic Landmark, still in the hands of the city, county, and state, that we hope to fold into the archaeological district in the days ahead to make Moccasin Bend whole. One of the first people I met when I arrived in this area was Shelley Andrews. She was the outgoing executive director of the Friends of Moccasin Bend National Park, and Shelley's passion for Moccasin Bend was evident, contagious, and reflective of the broader commitment of the Friends of Moccasin Bend and the many park supporters throughout the community. It was this collective vision for the promise of Moccasin Bend that encouraged me to restart consultation with the associated tribal nations and lead a long-term public planning process that resulted in a general management plan for Moccasin Bend. This plan, the protection of and preservation of sensitive archaeological resources with, yes, opportunities for the public to access, understand, and appreciate why Moccasin Bend is worthy of inclusion in the national park system. Over the following years, the Friends of Moccasin Bend, as has been mentioned, joined forces with the Friends of Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park to create a single, powerful, philanthropic organization. National Park Partners of Chickamauga, Chattanooga, and Moccasin Bend, we had a common goal: implement the Moccasin Bend plan. The first project: design, fund, approve, and build an orientation plaza on Moccasin Bend, where everyone from children to elders could gather, share stories, and plan their experience on Moccasin Bend. Now, I can tell you that this was not a quick nor smooth process. We hit more than one detour and delay. At times, I wondered if we would succeed. Throughout it all, Tricia Mims, the board of National Park Partners, and donors throughout the community did not waver with your support. As a result, design was completed, community funds were raised, matching grants were secured from the National Park Service, and final approval from the director of the National Park Service was in hand. As such, I am pleased to let you know that we anticipate breaking ground soon, and by next year, we will be able to gather on Moccasin Bend to cut the ribbon and celebrate this new visitor destination together. With that, please welcome back to the podium the esteemed Tricia Mims.
Thanks, Fred. Well, when we first began planning this event, it was 2022. We had thought about the 20-year anniversary being the legislation passed in 2003 by Congressman Wong. But then we realized that the groundbreaking for the new visitor orientation plaza wasn't going to quite make it in time. So we thought, well, you know what? Let's just commemorate 20 years since the 2004 land donations. Because honestly, the land donations, as mentioned, from the City of Chattanooga, Hamilton County, and the state of Tennessee to the National Park Service are what really actually established the physical location that became the National Archeological District. So we're planning a 20-year celebration, and then the world turned upside down a little bit when we got news that the state of Tennessee was proposing to rebuild the mental hospital on Moccasin Bend instead of relocating. And I'll never forget Becky Browder, who spent 30 years or so in county government in the development office and really knew the ins and outs, said, man, if it's already going to the State Building Commission, it's all but done. And we kept hearing things like, it's over, the cake is baked, all the things. So a little group of us kind of were sitting around trying to, get over the shock and feeling a little bit pessimistic about our chances of changing that decision. But we decided to fight like hell. Because our mission at National Park Partners is to advocate for our national park. And we knew that this proposal was a direct threat to the cultural and historic integrity of those resources that are buried in the ground, that are the history and legacy of 12,000 years of humans traversing the North American continent. They belong to all of us here today, now and forever. So our board chair, Dan Sade, who is unable to be with us today but sends his best, rallied our National Park Partners board behind relaunching the Save the Bend campaign from the 1980s. And then we decided to call it Save the Bend again. So we printed the old rectangular, back of your pickup truck sticker from the 1980s, bright green, white letters, hard to miss. But then we also created a new little oval like Subaru model to go with it. We ruffled a bunch of feathers, I'm sure. But you know what? The community joined us. Jim Johnson started a petition. He said, I'm just going to do it. SaveTheBend.com. Go sign the petition. About 5,000 people signed it. Mark McKnight and Reflection Writing, they were among the first of our conservation partners to actually publicly come out and say, you know what? We stand on the side of conservation. As did many other organizations and individuals that saw this potentially hot, political hot potato. There's no question that there was a lot of ins and outs, let's say, to this issue, but they didn't hesitate, and they understood that the outcome would affect the trajectory of Chattanooga history for the next century. So both sides of the editorial board of the Chattanooga Times Free Press, led by Chris Bass, wrote early and wrote often, and were in lockstep. That never happens. If y'all know the Chattanooga paper, Times, Free Press, never the same. They were in lockstep advocating for a preservation outcome. I've honestly lost count of how many times Ray Bassett had us on to Scenic Routes to keep getting the word out. Same with Jed Mescon and WGOW and our own Jennifer Crutchfield, who never missed an opportunity to get up in front of people to talk about Save the Bend. Meanwhile, Jay Mills called every archaeologist that ever set foot on Moccasin Bend, and even if they hadn't set foot on it yet, he invited them to set foot on Moccasin Bend and help remake the archaeological case. As Major McCullough said back in our April forum, it had already been made. This was already decided. Every single acre, inch, period within the 1,000-acre National Historic Landmark was significant. There's no cherry picking. You can't say this part's okay to build on, but that part's not. I think Jay deserves, among many other things, an honorary law degree because he really did look into all the ways that a rebuild would possibly constitute a violation of public trust based on the very, very significant National Historic Landmark legislation that had loopholes involved in the funding that made avoiding things like NEPA and Section 106 possible. We celebrated the major wins when Chief Hicks and the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians passed a resolution back in April opposing new construction. The Cherokee Tri-Council followed suit in June. Y'all, those two things and much, much more are because of Zach Wamp. Mickey Robbins, Dan Sade, Jay Mills, Zach Wamp, and I met on a nearly weekly basis for 14 months as the ad hoc Save the Bend Again strategy team. We all had a role to play. Mickey was the bulldog. Dan was the voice of reason. Jay was the researcher / workhorse. I mean, I think you spent more time in the office than me, Jay. I'm not sure about that. And Zach was the master of the political. The connections he made and kept over decades in public office and private sector consulting proved beyond invaluable. He was not afraid to pick up the phone and tell someone he knew and respected that they were just plain wrong about rebuilding on Moccasin Bend, including Governor Bill Lee. We are so grateful for the governor's announcement that the state will not rebuild on Moccasin Bend and will immediately begin the process of relocating operations. We are grateful to Commissioner Marie Williams and all who do the important work of addressing mental health and substance abuse care across our state. Commissioner Williams actually listened to the early alarm bells we sounded prior to that State Building Commission meeting last September and requested the archaeological survey that came back definitively proving what we already knew, that the highest and best use of this land is preservation and cultural interpretation. We are grateful to the local elected officials for the due diligence, though if I may humbly suggest, perhaps we redefine due diligence when it comes to Moccasin Bend. May I offer the wonderful example of the National Park Service. Decisions on public land deserve and honestly require public input and stakeholder involvement. And that needs to happen way before proposed building sites and certainly before you ever get to any kind of design phase. I hope we can all learn lessons from this latest story in Moccasin Bend's long journey. We are all in this together. National Park Partners is the conduit to the community. We gathered your voices. We talked to everyone that we could think of. We got the word out. We had the support in the media to continue to get the word out. We are the Friends of Moccasin Bend. We are the Friends of Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park. And we represent the public, the true landowners of all public land. And we expect to be involved in every decision-making point for Moccasin Bend, just as we were 20 years ago, alongside the City of Chattanooga, Hamilton County, State of Tennessee, the National Park Service, and our tribal partners. We will accept nothing less. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Scott Martin, the administrator of Chattanooga's Department of Parks and Outdoors.
Y'all been sitting for a while, so I'll be quick. I learned something interesting today, and I'm happy to announce to this group, the Outdoor Writers Association of America that you spoke of earlier are coming back next year to Chattanooga. And I think this group has a little story we want to share with those outdoor writers. So give yourself a big hand for that. The city stands on board. Everyone's locked in. I think it's important to remember this. The Inuit nations have a statement where they say, sometimes it's more important to have story than it is to have food. And if we think about that, it makes a lot of sense, because if you have a story, you have a reason to get food. And if you're a city with a future, you have a reason to conserve your history. You do this because you believe in your future. And to that end, right now, as you're doing your work, Brad, the city is doing the design work to connect the Riverwalk from Moccasin Bend to our vibrant North End, and aims to have that under construction this year as well. So we stand allied with our allies to connect this, finish this story, and get it done. And today is not the end. Today is the end of the beginning, the planning work we get to do now with the focus and the discipline and the hard work that's going to come. It's going to be hard. There's nothing more exciting, because there's never been a more exciting time to work with our U.S. National Park Service. They are more creative today at projects like the Presidio, Governor's Island, the Waco Remains than they have ever been in their history. And we can't wait to see what, Brad, you and your team unlock for us here in Hamilton County and Chattanooga. Thank you all so much. My pleasure to introduce Matt Foltz, the County Park Director.
There's never a wrong time to do the right thing. I was sitting in that forum where all hope was lost. And I was reminded of a quote of the 3 simple truths I'd like to share. Love needs action, trust needs proof, and sorry needs change. I feel many pieces of this story we are gathered here today to tell could be captured in these simple truths. Your actions have proved your love for this place, and as we find a more suitable home for the hospital and the firing range, let our actions join yours in showing how much we value the history and heritage of this site. The story of the Bend is full of simple joys and hard truths, more than could truly be reflected in a short few minutes. And I hope you take the time this week to see some of these talks that they're doing for the Trail of Tears Conference. Our hope is that the change offered by our actions and the efforts of the National Park Service can be a regenerative one for the soul and the soil of this beautiful Bend. When Mayor Womp was elected, he spoke of taking the path of civic courage. You have walked that path to get us here today. Thank you for never losing faith in your mission to forge a brighter future by not only preserving the past, but also respecting it. And as you all know, doing what is right isn't always easy, but it is always right. The county is committed to walk this path with you today and every day. Let us fill our days with real conversations that lead to real change, so that at night, when we gather with our friends or our family, when we put our children to bed, and they ask us what we did today, that we can say with pride that we had the courage to do the right thing. And let that be our legacy that we leave. It's my privilege to be on this stage with you. And it's my pleasure to introduce Jenny Veal with Tennessee Department of Tourism. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here today to celebrate the preservation of one of our nation's most important and significant cultural heritage sites, Moccasin Bend National Archeological District. I'm here on behalf of the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development and our Commissioner, Mark Ezell, who is traveling, but sends his joy and congratulations on this special day. I want to say, as a resident of the Chattanooga region for most of my adult life, that I am so deeply appreciative of all the members of our community who have helped save the Bend. This project has been a lifelong commitment for so many of you who are here today, part of a riverfront plan that could not be complete without the restoration of Moccasin Bend. In a Chattanooga Times Free Press article or editorial earlier this year, Eleanor Cooper, who was a former community liaison for the Moccasin Bend Task Force, said this, and I loved rereading this. The people of Chattanooga and Hamilton County, living and dead, hold this area in trust to the past as well as to the future. And that's why we're here today. Thank you to our political leadership, to Congressman Zach Womp and Greg Bridle for not giving up on this project. Thank you to Tricia with National Park Partners and Brad with Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park for your tireless work. They've become colleagues of mine in tourism. I've seen them at every tourism event over the last year. This last September, when Governor Bill Lee announced the results of the archaeological study and his decision regarding development there, a whole bunch of us took a collective breath of relief and shed a few tears of joy in celebration with all of you who have worked so hard on this project. So today marks the preservation of Moccasin Bend, but it also shows the world what a community of citizens with purpose and heart can do. What a legacy. Thank you. So my role today is to remind us about the exciting impact that Moccasin Bend National Archeological Park will have on tourism in the state in the future. As you know, visitors love coming to Tennessee to experience our mountains and rivers, music and communities, and our state's incredible history. As the only National Park Service archaeological district in the nation, Moccasin Bend will bring tens of thousands of new visitors to this region who will not only learn about the incredible history that took place here, but will also enjoy one of the most scenic landscapes in the state. Tennessee Tourism Commissioner Mark Gazelle likes to say, tourism is real money. As Moccasin Bend grows and develops, it will not only enrich and preserve the community's cultural heritage, but will contribute to the ongoing economic impact of tourism in Tennessee. Tourism to Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park is already contributing more than $81 million to communities located within 60 miles of the park, according to a 2022 study by the National Park Service that Brad shared with our department. And tourism is the second largest industry in Tennessee. And we had another record year of economic impact in 2023. Visitors in Tennessee topped 144 million, spending an estimated $84 million per day in 2023. Direct visitor spending in Tennessee was $31 billion, the highest direct visitor spending the state has ever seen. And this generated more than $3 billion in direct state and local sales tax revenue, supporting 1 out of every 24 jobs in the state. So this site will not only enrich and preserve a deeply significant archaeological site, but will contribute to the ongoing economic impact of tourism in Tennessee. So congratulations once again on this historic day that marks a significant development for Chattanooga and the state. Tennessee Tourism is committed to supporting this effort and the vision to preserve and promote Moccasin Bend National Archeological District. Thank you.
Before we adjourn, 2 things. First, I need to ask Don Andrews, David Bowman, Becky Browder, Jay Mills, Kay Parrish, Sally Robinson, Troy Poteet, and Greg Vital to assemble over here, if you would. If you're already on the stage, you can stay there. After the end of this program, which is momentarily, the Trail of Tears Association Conference will be dismissed through the member entrance of the aquarium downstairs to dinner prior to the lecture series event. I did want to share some remarks from Michael Wurzel. We've mentioned Shelley Andrews, who was the first director of the Friends of Moccasin Bend, and Kay Parrish, who served as the interim, and then yours truly, of course, who's been involved since then. But Michael Wurzel, for just a few years, very important years, was the director, and he shared these remarks from his new home in Colorado. You don't know what I would give to be in Chattanooga on this beautiful day to celebrate this incredible success with you. It was the honor of a lifetime to work for such a great group like the Friends of Moccasin Bend, and I miss you all dearly. As one-time executive director, or you might say best friend of the Bend, my time at the Friends was a short blip compared to the decades of service, time, effort, money, and other resources that many of you, board members and various friends, partners, and supporters of the Bend, have given along the way to protect and to enhance this special place. You know who you are. Today is for you. Congratulations for not giving up on the Bend, because that would have been the easier path. Thank you for your steadfastness and dedication, because without you, we wouldn't be here today celebrating this special success. Cheers to saving Moccasin Bend again and again and again, or however many times it takes to realize our collective vision for the incredible place that is Moccasin Bend. So we had a painting donated from a local artist, George Donne. It's absolutely gorgeous, as you can see. It was practically impossible to just do a small number of prints because honestly, if we could, we'd give one to everybody that was ever involved. But then we wouldn't be a very good nonprofit because we would have spent all our money. So instead, these are going to the Friends of Moccasin Bend, dedicated leaders and partners who have put 20 plus years into this effort. We had to stop it somewhere, but it was really important to honor Shelley's family in part of this, and also to recognize those folks who've been at it a long time. Mickey, you get one too. Get on there, Mickey. And then, as Michael said, you know who you are. For those of you who received a special invitation, if you served on the Friends of Moccasin Bend board in the past, or the National Park Partners board currently, if you've been involved over the years in the Save the Bend or Save the Bend Again campaign, we have a special gift for you as well. Just look for Becky and Lana over there. Trail of Tears folks, we'll see you at the lecture series. So again, you can depart for dinner, and happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Happy 20-year anniversary of Moccasin Bend. Thank you to our city, state, county, and federal partners, past, present, and future, and tribal partners too. We appreciate you.